I'm going to show you how to use an Imperial tape measure. Welcome back to more David's DIY. On this channel we do a lot of around the house DIY, kind of everyday problems solved. So if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for a lot more really great content. And remember, in the description below are all the instructions and also links to the equipment used in this video. Now let's get into it. So most tape measures are going to look very similar to this. They're probably going to have 1/16 of an inch on one side and 1/8 of an inch on the other side. All the lines with the numbers on it, the longest lines, those are your inches. So like 1, 2, 3, those are your inches. Between each inch, the line that is the next smallest length from that are going to be your halves. And between the halves, the lines are going to be slightly smaller, and those are your quarters. I've illustrated that on this piece of paper here. This is to scale 1 inch. So you've got 1, and at the other end you've got 2 inches. And between that, the line is slightly smaller. That's going to be your 1/2 inch. And between that is going to be your quarters. And when you're getting started kind of figuring out fractions and tape measures, start with just halves and quarters, and then you can work your way down to 1/8 and 1/16 and so on. And probably the easiest way to kind of figure out measurements is, let's say your measurement ended here at 1 3/4 inches. So you could either count back from the 2, 1/4, or you could count up from 1, 1, 2, 3/4, and then you know it's 1 3/4. And if you're trying to figure out even what these lines are, all you do is you look at your tape and you count how many lines are between each. If you count from, between the 2 and the 3, and there's 16 little lines in between there, that means those are 1/16 of an inch. And all you do is you literally count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on until you get to where your measurement is, and it's that many 1/16. Similar to here, you could say, 1, 2, 3, and you're at 1 3/4. It's really easy, just like that. And as you work your way down into 1/8 of an inch, what I've got illustrated here on this piece of paper, this is to scale 1 inch again. You've got these smaller lines that are 1/8, and these are going to be between the quarters, and you're going to have 8 of those lines between each inch. And the same as with quarters, you can literally just count up to your measurement. If your material maybe ends here, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's 1 5/8 of an inch, and so on, depending on how many inches your measurement actually is. Or like vice versa, like I said, let's say your measurement ended here at 7/8, you count back from the next full inch. So you go 1 back, so that means that's going to be 7 out of the 8 lines. So it's going to be 7/8 of an inch. Another thing I'd like to mention too is the tab on the end of the tape measure. The tab moves, and the reason it moves is depending if you're measuring up against something or pulling off of something. The tab moves the exact right amount to make up for the thickness of the tab. And often those tabs can wear out, or maybe you don't trust the tab itself. And you can do what's called burning an inch, and you can actually start your measurement at the first inch. And that's going to make sure your measurement is always accurate no matter how much that tab is moving. And then you just add on that extra inch to your measurement to make up for the fact that you started at 1. And if you're kind of getting confused about, is my measurement 1/8? Is it 1/16? Is it quarters? If the top number of your fraction in your measurement is a whole number, like 2, 4, 6, then that means you need to divide that down. So like if you count, your measurement's here at the half line, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4. You go, okay, it's 1 4/8, but it's not going to be 4/8. So you have to divide that down into 1/4. The top number of your fraction in your measurement is always going to be an odd number, like 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on. Then you know that that is the actual dimension, or I should say the fraction of the dimension that you're trying to get. And a good way to figure out whether you're dealing with, whether your measurement you're taking is dealing with 1/16 or quarters or 1/8 or whatever. Let's say your measurement ends right here on the tape, which is, just under 5. So you count back, 1, 2, 3. Now you're like, okay, that's 3 lines, but what is it? Is it, 4 and what? So you count how many lines are between the inch that yours landed on, and then you turn that into the fraction. So you've gone back 1, 2, 3. So how many are between? There's 16. And then you count down from the end of the line So if there's 16, I've counted back 3, that's 13. So that means that's going to be 13/16 of an inch. Or vice versa, you can count up from the front end of the measurement. Kind of, if you're on this side of half, I would count, from the beginning. If you're on this side of the half, I would count back from the next number. And once again, as you start to break your fractions down, this is an illustration of 1 inch and 16ths of an inch between. So the smaller the fraction of an inch, the smaller the lines on the tape measure get. And that's kind of how you distinguish. The half is going to be the tallest, quarters are next down, eighths, and then the 16ths are going to be the smallest lines. And if your tape goes down to 30 seconds, they're going to be, even lower. And it's the same thing. You literally just count the lines. And I know that, it seems kind of lame and it sounds time consuming, but that's how you're going to learn the fractions. You just count the lines. Even to this day, to double check, that's kind of what you end up doing, because you glance at a tape quick, you're like, okay, where am I at? And then you count back 3 or you count back 5. And then you know exactly where you're at. It's really the way to do it, and it's going to help you. And you can even go ahead and maybe draw an illustration like this, and you kind of look at it, you look at your tape, and you kind of work at it, and you start to figure out what the fractions are, where they are on the tape, what they mean, so on and so forth. And so dealing with Imperial, there's going to be 12 inches in 1 foot. So all the way up to 1 foot, which is marked here on the tape, is 12 inches. And on this tape, it actually gives you the number of inches past that foot, which is kind of nice. So it's 12 foot 1, 12 foot 2, 12 foot 3, that's marked right on the tape here. And a lot of tapes will have this other number here that you notice, this 16, and then 16 inches later there's going to be 32. And those marks those numbers are for marking studs every 16 inches. So if you're just doing general measuring, don't pay attention to those too much. But it's the same thing. You can also buy tape measures. I think I might have one here. Yeah, you can buy tape measures like this. I don't know if you can see this, but this actually has the fractions written right on the tape measure there. And that's going to help you getting started if you can find a tape measure like this. It also has centimeters. And another good tip to know is that 1 inch equals 25.4 centimeters. So if you're converting from millimeters to inches, that you're going to really want to have a centimeters inches tape. And that's going to help you out a lot in your projects. So here I've got an illustration of 1 inch divided up into 30 seconds. And like I said before, it's just going to be the next smallest lines between the eighths. So from this line to this line, there's going to be 32 marks. And all you do is you just count them up to where your measurement ends. And, if you're at 1/8, you know that just a little bit forward of that is going to be 4 plus 1. It's going to be 5/30 seconds. And that's the easiest way to do it, is just counting the lines. I can't really stress that enough when you're starting using a tape measure, is instead of just looking at it and trying to think, okay, what is it? You really got to count the lines, and that's going to help you learn it. So an example of what I mean is, if you pull your tape out to the edge of this piece of wood here, you look and see which line is at the edge, and you count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the 7th line. Now 7 what? It's 7 inches and 7 something. How many lines are there between these 2 inches? There's 16. So that means it's going to be 7 and 7/16. That's the easiest way to do it. Now if you came back here to this line, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now like I said before, the top number of your fraction is going to be an odd number. So because it's 6, you're going to cut that in half. It's going to be 3. So 3 what? How many of those length lines are between? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means that dimension right there would be 3/8. So 7 and 3/8 of an inch. Just the same as measuring this piece of wood here. This line falls right on the edge of the wood. So how many of those length lines are there between 2 inches? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then like I said before, if you're near the end of the inch, you can count back. So how many back is that? It's 1. So that means you're going to take the 1 from the 8, so that's going to be 7/8. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 inch plus 7/8. So 1 and 7/8 inches. Just like that. And what I meant before about burning an inch and this tab, if you were pushing your tape up against here and wanted to measure from this point to this point, but you weren't sure about the accuracy of this tab, you just take your tape and you move it in to the first inch, and then you just measure from that first inch out to the edge of the piece of wood, and you take that measurement like that, and it's always going to be accurate if you start with that 1-inch line. So remember, in the description below, all the instructions, also links to all the tools used in this video. Definitely hit that like button, subscribe for more great content. See you in the next one.